with the season finale of Before, it presents the idea that it knew how to end the series, it's just, or even season. But in terms of how to build up to that ending, that was the rough part. So, getting to the recap, we pick up where we left off in terms of Eli kidnapping Noah, but by the time Jane, I think her name is Jane, I accidentally put down Joan, before Jane is able to get in contact with Eli, try to convince him, to come back, they're already damn near at the farmhouse, and pretty much neither one of them's listening to the other, and they truly can't convince each other to do what they want. So after some point, Eli just disconnects the radio, and he takes Eli to the house, and to much surprise, despite Eli dealing with all types of means of blue lips, chills, and all these other kind of issues, he gets out of that gurney and he's walking like nothing has ever been wrong with him, which is a little bit shocking when it comes to Eli, but he goes with it. And with that, they go inside, and at first it just seems like a strangely well-kept house despite how old it is. But then that shadow thing that has never really been explained and doesn't get explained in this episode comes about, and with that, Noah is off. He somehow finds a weapon that's been left behind by whoever used to live there before. And of course, Eli, knowing what happens when Noah gets weapons, he tries to calm him down, possibly get the weapon from him. But Noah, as soon as that shadow keeps moving, he bolts, and then Eli goes after him. With that, eventually he comes to a door, which kind of gives you the feeling that we're about to learn more about what happened with Lynn. But before that happens, we learn how, at least a couple of generations ago, Eli, Noah, and Lynn were connected. So, getting to the second topic, the connection when it comes to Eli, Noah, and Lynn seems to be multi-generational in the terms of these three have been in each other's lives for at least 3 lifetimes. We know in this current lifetime, Noah came into Eli's life almost by instincts. Previously, Lynn came into Eli's life as Benjamin was dying, thanks to his own psychosis and, to some degree, Eli. And it seems way back when the Dutch originally settled in the New York area, these three were also together. Now, when we see them as Dutch kids, they don't give them names. So the only thing that becomes clear is that in a different life, Noah was a girl, Eli was still a boy, and Lynn was still a woman. And it seems that in different lives, Eli and Lynn still find a way to kind of be crushing on each other. And in this life, Lynn definitely had some type of crush on Eli. But it seems Noah's the one that brought them together, similar to what we saw when it came to Benjamin bringing Lynn and Eli together. But in this case, it seems that Noah was one of Eli's best friends, or at the very least, she often sought him out to play. Then came Lynn, who was waiting for them by the lake. And while Lynn and Eli, mainly Lynn from what we saw, is kind of giving Eli googly eyes, Noah's off looking at what looks like to be a beehive, maybe a hornet's nest, it's hard to say. And Eli gets interested in what they're doing, goes over, Lynn follows, and eventually they disturb the hive enough to be attacked. They're running, and accidentally, Eli knocks Noah onto the lake. They hit their head, and seemingly from that alone, their skull got crushed or something, or some other type of damage, because next thing you know, Eli's eye is rolling to the back of her head. And next thing we know, while Lynn is screaming for Eli to do something, Noah is sinking and is going from maybe just having a traumatic head injury to now drowning. That seemingly is the birth of the trauma that Noah has gone through that seemingly keeps repeating itself in terms of Eli not doing something leading to them dying, or else Eli being somewhat involved in their death. Now, once all this is uncovered, things kind of shift in a way, and now we go to Eli dealing with what happened with Lynn. Now, when it comes to Lynn and Eli, it's been established that Eli is not really the type to have those difficult conversations. And when it comes to Lynn having cancer, he wanted to kind of instill hope, push perseverance. And meanwhile, Lynn is vomiting, she's in pain, and it's coming to that point where her quality of life is too terrible to want to really continue on. Yet here, Eli doesn't even want to have a conversation about her dying or how she's feeling. Instead, he wants to keep things on a positive note. And it seems on the day that she decided to take her own life, he abandoned her mid-conversation because he just couldn't deal with it anymore. And he went off to the pool, he went off to get Chinese food. And when he returned, he did find Lynn in the tub. And it seems, if you consider this a definitive take on what happened, Eli did not choke his wife to death. What happened was he checked on her, got a little teary-eyed and everything, because, it's very traumatic to see someone you love try to kill themselves. And while he was trying to console her, talk to her, she signaled to put his hands up near here, and it seems he didn't choke her like we saw before, but instead he might have pushed her down to the point where she accidentally, or maybe he intentionally drowned her. It's hard to say. The only thing that is clear is that he did not choke her in like a domestic violence or like tried to leave marks type of way. If anything, maybe for a second he tried to help her, but then realized that it's not going to work, because not too long after he kind of pushes her down or whatever, next thing you know, you see him pulling her out of the tub. So as is very clear, Lynn is dead. How much of an effect Eli had on her final moments to either end things or just be there, still kind of debatable, but it's very much clear that his lack of empathy, his lack of willingness to even deal with dark and maybe uncomfortable topics didn't help the situation, and perhaps prolonged it because Lynn maybe tried to live for his sakes, but at a certain point she had to end her life because it clearly was not going to get better for her. Which leads to the last topic. There's a time jump after all these events, and what we learn is after Eli had all of his visions, Noah seemingly within about 6 months was perfectly okay. He's playing like a normal kid. Denise is happy since she got custody back. And as for Eli, outside of having to be in a 5-month residential treatment center, nothing happens to him. I guess they just kind of piggyback off of what happened before, considered it a psychological break, dealing with his grief and everything. And in some ways he admits it, which probably helped. And now, yes, he's still having some delusions like seeing worms cross his forehead and everything, but it seems, at least with Barbara, she trusts him enough to watch Sophie and to show there is some real progress. When Sophie talks about Lynn and also Lynn speaking through her, Eli doesn't shut it down. He doesn't kind of shut down the spiritualism and all that. He recognizes that potentially when it comes to spiritualism and stuff like that, maybe there are sciences yet discovered or researched, rather than all the sciences that we know are the definitive answers to everything in the universe, and anything that people try to push beyond that is just nonsense they're using because they lack the ability to understand or learn. So again, to the review section, pretty much like last time, it's not a lengthy review because for the most part our recap's so much longer and there's not much to talk about after that. But getting to the point, I think when it comes to before, and this probably is going to spill over to the season review when we do it hopefully soon, I think this show got into its own way, because with the way this finale is, I'm satisfied. I'm happy, in fact, with what we got. But I feel like the build-up to it was very inconsistent. Like in my mind, if they're going to have it where Noah, Eli, and Lynn are interconnected and they keep popping up each other's lives, sometimes by instinct, sometimes by fate, they could have pushed that more. I mean, they could have had it where we kept seeing that pool that Eli liked going to. They could have had it where Lynn's spirit, or maybe another version of Noah, was at that pool at one time and kind of show that this is something that's been going on for hundreds of years, that these three people, for whatever reason, are connected. And they could have even made it so if they wanted to push for season 2, they could have set up for a different season to kind of show a different version of them and realizing how connected they are. But instead, they had Eli doing all this ridiculous versions of exposure therapy, really pushing Noah to his limits. Never mind, you also had him going against the spiritualism, which in my mind, it would have been interesting to see him really explore that more. I mean, even if he did push back against it, again, this sense that a lot of the ways they could have built up to the finale better, they just kind of avoided it, including having Eli go to therapy, because it could have been interesting to see him kind of deal with his feelings, how the Noah situation, hell, even have him, Bob, and Sophie go to family therapy, and maybe, as we see in the end, with him accepting that Sophie possibly can speak to Lynn, or at least him not decide to kind of crush it, they could have family therapy in which she was talking about her grandmother and really show how maybe that Lynn didn't reincarnate into a granddaughter, but that there's a connection there that allows them to stay still in each other's lives because for whatever reason they're fated to be. But again, this is one of those cases where in hindsight, retrospectively, whatever you want to call it, you can see where things went wrong, but maybe you should just appreciate in the end things they weren't perfect whatsoever, but at least you can say they did end on an all right note.